Hey, what's going on out there? I'm just going to do a quick video. This afternoon, something cool came into the shop. And we got the Corvette style valve covers on a small block 350. And it's kind of pretty. Newer master and all that. Nice aluminum radiator. It's got one of those flex fans, but it's actually thick aluminum, not that weird cheapy stainless stuff that used to explode. I mean, I don't know if this is any better, but it looks to be quality. Judging by the car, it must be all right. Look at that battery tray. Doesn't that look minty? You look at all the metal on this car. Even the firewall. Have you ever seen anything so clean? Look at that. I work on a lot of these cars from the 50s and 60s, and I mean, look at the rad support in this piece right here. That's kind of cool. I like that. You should have got stainless for these just to make that even cooler. There's a reason this car is as clean as it is. And this is kind of a fun video. Let me give you a clue what the paint looks like on this, You see that? What kind of color changes as you move with it. So what you're looking at looks a lot like a 69 Camaro SS. And it's got the slightly wider rally wheels on it. Some really old BF Goodrich tires. That's some really cool paint on there. The nickel on this car is almost perfect. Still got to throw the wipers on and fresh glass. Fresh-ish. I don't know why the pig mat's on the seat. You can see this lovely interior. The dash, check it out. Beautiful wheel. Even all these pieces are, they still got the little rubber and they're soft and fresh. And you've got all this nickel, it's real nice. Almost perfect door handles. Super clean lights, bumper. There's no front bumper on because he likes it that way, but he does have a brand new in-box bumper for the car. It's an older SS decal with a little bit of paint off it. Might be the biggest flaw in this car. Even the valance is clean, the bumpers are sweet. Like, look at how clear these tail lights are. So you'd think that this is like a real nice clean example of a 1969 Camaro. I love the rosewood wheel he's got on there. Look at that. I think that's what he said it was. Either way, it's nice. And check it out. I think he was running auto meters right in the dash bezels, which is really cool. All white faced, and they match all these. None of them were cheapies. If you look at the pedals down there, they look brand spanking new. E-brake pedal looks brand spanking new. It's almost like this car sat in somebody's warehouse, and other than I mean, look at that paint. I mean, that's beautiful. I think the camera's actually picking it up, which is great. The camera doesn't always pick up things this nice when it comes to paint. if you hear something wheeling in the background, it's just me and nothing to worry about. So let's have a look and see what we're dealing with. This is... Now look at that new exhaust, new springs. There's your mufflers, your diff. Looks stainless hardware, like washers on the suspension. There's a reason that suspension looks kind of different. Wow. Look at that up under there. It's almost as though it hadn't seen dirt. Almost makes you wonder if this thing had ever seen winter. And I doubt it. There's a reason everything looks so good on this car. And that's because this is not a 1969 Camaro by Chevrolet. This is not a Chevrolet. What you're looking at is the first Dynacorn 69 Camaro body that was shown at Toronto Autorama in Canada in 2004. And a friend of mine made a deal with Dynacorn to keep the body in Canada, and they put this car together. And what you're looking at is a complete Dynacorn shell with Dynacorn doors, Dynacorn fenders, cowl hood, likely from Dynacorn, Dynacorn. Every available piece of metal that they make for a 69 Camaro in 2004 to 2005, again, Dynacorn. The whole car is basically a 2004 Camaro built with Dynacorn parts. Grill, all that stuff, trim pieces, whatever Dynacorn didn't do. Now, the seats are original 69 seats that were reupholstered. And 90% of the rest of this car is all year one. So he did the bezels and all the cool stuff, but he didn't have clusters, and he had some, but they were old and, you know, junk. So this is what he chose to do, is hide all his gauges in the original Camaro, well, the original style, because it's all reproduction. The whole car is reproduction. Like those little vents right there that go here, reproduction. It's funny too, because it says body by Fisher. I told him to knock those off and have someone machine them out, some aluminum ones that say body by Dynacorn, because as far as I'm concerned, this is a 2004 Dynacorn Camaro. So I know there's a lot of videos out there. Some body guys, they have the Dynacorn stuff and they say it's great. And then there's other guys that say that the Dynacorn stuff is absolutely terrible and they hate it. And you hear a lot of mixed reviews. And I'm sure when you order a fender or a quarter panel or whatever it is from any aftermarket company, sometimes they fit and sometimes they don't. Well, when they put this car together, the deal was, after he bought the body, the deal was they'd sell it to him, but he had to do some kind of thing where for 2 years he showed the car off the way it was at a couple Autoramas and a few other shows in New York State and Toronto, Ontario. And basically they wanted to show the car off and say, look what you can do with nothing but Dynacorn sheet metal. So the idea here was, other than a few little shipping dings, they claim that there was no filler put in the car, again, except where there might have been some little shipping dings. Now, the body was pretty impressive to begin with. But, you know, the fenders and stuff would have some. Now, that being said, a little dent there. I don't know if you can pick that up. That was a ding that happened. However, if I come around to this side of the car, you can see a wee wobble in the quarter. Now it's going to be hard to pick that up. There it is. You can see that little ding. So that was on the body, and they didn't fill it. They left it. And I think Dynacorn was trying to show that, you know, if you play with the panels and do a little bit of metal work and set up a car right, you could have something pretty close to the original vehicle. But the whole underside of this car is like brand new. Even though this is an 04, which is almost 20 years old, it looks brand new underneath. It's been garaged, it's never seen winter, and so on. The downside, so, you know, we'll give Dynacorn a good and bad review. Now, 2004, right? So I'm assuming their products, in theory, should have gotten better with time. So what have I noticed with Dynacorn stuff? And you see the door gap, little gap up there. Aftermarket door is at the body. I've done enough of these cars that the door always does that. If you want it real nice, you can weld a nice little edge on here and file it out. But if you ever seen anything out of 1969, look, those production cars fit terribly. And that gap is actually pretty nice. That one is technically a little bit on the thin side, where this is probably more like what they would have looked like. Now, although I find up here the split seems like a little bit much, now I can body work that out, not a big deal. But I've got a 68 Firebird outside that's an all original car, which I've shown in other videos. It's kind of like that on one side as well. Things mostly fit, but it wasn't a perfect car. So the downside is why it's here today, right? So 2004, they put this car together, they threw it together, and this went to shows. And then my friend who owned the car, he drove it around for a couple of years, and they actually had I think it was a 6-liter LS. No, sorry. This car did have an LS, but I think before that it had a 383 stroker, where now it just has a 350 small block. I guess he robbed the LS package for something else he was building. And he basically and this was going to be his personal car after the contract showing the car off was over, right? So he put a 383 stroker in it, and that's how he drove it for a few years. And then as time went on, he pulled that motor for some other project, which I don't know why you would tear apart your daily driver. Please don't do that. Or your, you know, what do you call it? Coffee and cars show car. You know, it's a driver, but it's a car that a guy drives. Whatever. It's a pretty nice car for a car that somebody drives. But then for years this sat, and this guy has a lot of different cars and a lot of projects going, and I do a lot of the body work for this guy. Actually, I think at this point I'm doing all his stuff. But I went over one day to look at all his projects, and he said to me, you know, I don't know which ones to build and which ones to sell. And I said, the first thing you need to do is find a small block and put this car back together. Like, it's a shame that you're dealing with all these classic cars and you've got nothing to drive, and you literally have this in your garage. So last fall I went over to his place. We plucked a late 70s 350. I forget what he said. He pulled it out of a Z28 or something, but it was a running, driving, healthy 350. And I said, well, let's just dump it in, right? Transmission's still in the car and so on, or he had the transmission for it. It's either a 350 or a 400 turbo trans. And I said, you have it all kicking around, throw it together and drive the car. Now, the issue that he had for a lot of years, because this is all Dynacorn pieces, I'm going to show you a couple things up close. And I mean, it could be builder error too. There was a little rub here. The door was too far out, so the whole front end was this way, and that door was too far in. And whoever lined up this car, they just slapped the panels together and made it work and kind of painted the car. And I don't know, there could have been a deadline on it and whatever else. So now the guy who owns the car can assemble them, but he's not a body man, and lining things up, as I've learned, is not It's not most people's strong suit. So, as nice as this car was when they showed it off at the Autoramas and whatnot, things didn't quite line up great. But it gave people the opportunity to see what you could throw together right out of the box. Oh, side note, the reason for this amazing paint job, when the deal was made to build this car and go to the Autorama events, it just so happened that the guy who was visiting the booth, who happened to be, I guess he was eavesdropping or they all knew each other, hard to say, whatever the story is, was the paint rep from Sherwin-Williams and had these 8 colors that were coming out for 2005 that were super hot. And I believe this one is called Black Jade. However, you can only get this in waterborne now. So if you're a solvent guy, you know, it's like you can see, like, it's greenish and blackish, but there's enough of this metallic in it that you get this as you move with the light. Let's see if I can catch that again. You can almost get like a coppery brown. Like, it is a tremendous color. So that was also done on purpose, right? It's like, let's be bold and put a insane color on it. So when people look at it, even though the body's not perfect, again, all aftermarket panels, doesn't have to be perfect, it'll look good and it'll show off that it ain't perfect. My perspective on this car, I'm very good with metal work. And if you look at my video where I got a few videos where I worked on a 69 Plymouth Sport Satellite, I basically recut quarters, all kinds of stuff, moved them in and out. I lined everything up so the whole car would be flush, very, very straight. And it's a driver, but that's just something I like to do. So my comment on this being a Dynacorn car, I find the trunk lid is a little bit high. You can see it kind of over there. But I'm going to admit right now, every time I work on a first-gen F-body car, Camaro Firebird, that seems to be an issue. And I usually got to kind of squish it and reshape it a bit and make it fit. And, you know, if you want it to fit real nice back here, you know, you got to compromise somewhere. But they didn't do that. They took this out of a box and bolted it on. So it's a little higher than even I would have left it. Now, we could strip this down, metalwork a bunch of things and fix that. We're not gonna. This is a driver. Now, at the end of the day, if this bodywork isn't good enough for you, now, the reason it's here, we had to take the whole car. It was never lined up good. Today, we spent a few hours, went through the car and made it so that everything opened and closed. The door gaps were somewhat okay. Hood closes without rubbing. We're going to have to touch up little things like that, right? I mean, again, it took 20 years for that to happen, but things weren't perfect. Where now the car is usable, drivable, and nothing runs. So as far as I'm concerned, this is good enough that your bodywork skills should be good enough to deal with the rest. And quite frankly, all we're going to do with this is touch up the paint, re-clear it. This is now going to be a pretty cool daily driver. Cheers.